Hi, I'm Jess. I study in the city and I'm excited to meet the Lord Mayor today. Yeah, so I just had, I wanted to know like the general idea of where do you see Adelaide in the next 10 years, and I guess what are your approaches to reach that goal?
Well, I think there are several systemic issues that we need to deal with. One of them is clearly the housing shortage. Another one is the lack of skills, because a lot of employers find it really hard to find skilled staff. But the other issues is to do with the change in people's habits, possibly through COVID, but otherwise just changing with time.
Yeah.
For instance, shops are less used. People are not using so many bricks and mortar shopping opportunities. They're often buying things online. Plus, there's been a very significant decline in people coming to work. So that means that a lot of our coffee shops, our restaurant places and shops generally have struggled post-COVID. I think that Adelaide has fared better, but we probably have to deal with a way of finding other uses for some of those shops. Similarly, other uses for some of the office space, because we don't need so much office space anymore if people aren't coming to work in the office. And so that leads us into thinking of ways we can repurpose buildings. So I haven't seen a good idea about how we can have a transition in our retail sector, but clearly we're never going to go back to buying everything in shops. I don't think you're ever going to stop using
Definitely,
online.
I do a lot of online shopping.
Yes.
And also my parents, they're both computer programmers, so they have the opportunity to work at home a lot as well. So they will go into work like once a week or something.
Once a week, there you go. So that means that, and it's tragic for the property owners, because if you own a shop, it's really, some of them have really struggled.
Yeah.
But we need to find a way of making those investments viable in some way, even if it's not in the old way.
Yep.
And one of the things we've been looking at with retail is trying to change the office use above the shops, so that if someone lives upstairs, they're more likely to shop downstairs, because where people are working from home, there's no reason why they shouldn't work from home in the CBD. And if you work from home, suppose you lived in Pirie Street,
Yeah.
you would still be supporting the coffee shops and the restaurants. So it's actually a way of repurposing a lot of city buildings. So we would like to see more people living in the city, and we'd like to see better facilities for residents, so that they have not just libraries but community centres. People increasingly in apartments want to have kind of makers and users facilities, because they haven't got tool sheds, they haven't got facilities for repairing things, and that kind of recycling is important. I'm a little bit obsessed with the idea of making the city sustainable, but that's not just through climate change initiatives and energy production. It's also through understanding that we have to recycle buildings because there's embedded energy in them. We need to recycle clothes, we need to recycle electrical goods, and we need to avoid fast fashion and fast furniture, because all of those issues, if we're not careful, put resources into landfill and damage the environment.
That's very interesting in the concept of like recycling buildings. So does that mean it's sort of like restructuring some existing buildings to be able to...
Well, I've always liked heritage buildings, and I think Adelaide has no reason, apart from the parklands, to think it's unique in the CBD. We have an interesting grid pattern, which is worth heritage listing, because the square pattern of roads is interesting.
Yeah.
But if we were to replace all of our buildings with modern buildings, and it looked like Houston, the whole environment would change, and we would have none of the pubs and the bars and the little shops.
Charm of Adelaide.
That's right. It would just be a wind tunnel with high-rise buildings that would be without ambience, without fun. So keeping heritage buildings is good for business, good for tourism, and good for residents, because you feel the city has a human scale.
Yes.
And once you've got the idea of wanting to keep heritage buildings, you have to find a way of recycling them. And sustainability, there's this concept of embedded energy. So there's a lot of embedded energy in cement and wood and metal. And if you demolish a building and put it into landfill, you've lost it. Whereas if you recycle the building, you have wasted less of that embedded energy. So it's really important. Plus, So you have the aesthetics and the charm and the ambience, plus you save energy wastage. So recycling buildings is a smart thing to do. And one of our campaigns at the moment is to refit and refurb the first and second floor above shops. Because if you go to Europe or Southeast Asia, people live over the shops.
Yes.
Whereas if you walk around some of our streets, they're dark at night. No one lives anywhere. They're all empty. And so the property owners have no rent and people can't find places to live. So it's pretty smart to try and convert those to residential.
Wow, that's really amazing actually. Like the ideas that you have that to sort of be able to move Adelaide forward while keeping its charm, original charm.
Do you like the heritage buildings?
I do, and I think one client that I had in the city, she was there temporarily for just a short stay while she was recovering from chemo, and she stayed at a nice I think it was a quarters. It was a servants' quarters.
Oh, really?
Yeah, a heritage servants' quarters, and it was beautiful, and it had a beautiful backyard, and it was just like a great way, I think, to make use of that building.
Yes.
Because it's like a getaway for her as well.
Yeah. Yes. Well, I'm glad you like the heritage buildings.
Yes, and the churches as well.
Yes, the churches. So with the heritage buildings, the council has programs to support through grants. So we have a heritage conservation program that puts a little over $1 million a year that we partner with property owners. And we also have sustainability, because some of the things you might need, for instance, before you would, I'm not sure whether you'd want to live in Hindley Street or Rundle Mall, but you might consider living in Rundle Mall if we had double glazing to keep the sound out, and you might consider it if it was all fitted out with electricity and nicely furnished. So we're trying to help the property owners by giving them grants to make that step, and then the advantage afterwards is they have an income stream. And I might not like to live in maybe Rundle Street or Hindley Street or Pirrie Street because I like a garden, but for people who are struggling, younger people who like a bit of nightlife, we could make it really attractive.
So how does the City Council of Adelaide collaborate with other sectors of government and independent sort of communities and things like that?
Well, we tend to be a regulatory body for a lot of commercial operators. We have planning laws, and we have legislation, and we have licensing, and we have a lot of regulatory things for businesses. But we also have grants we give to businesses to help them do the things we want them to do, like the housing project I spoke of. So that's mainly how we help the business sector. But we also invest in the public realm, and that helps businesses, because if you think of somewhere like Halifax Street, it's really buzzing with new restaurants now that we've done up the street and made it attractive. We work with the state government quite closely on different projects. So, for instance, we work with the police minister on city safety. We work with the housing minister on housing and homelessness. We worked with the arts minister to sponsor and give grants to everything from WOMAD to the Fringe and the Festival. So we actually invest in grant money into those projects. When it comes to federal government, we have a more distant relationship, but we do still apply for funding so that they might have money for road upgrades or major projects, and we try pretty hard to find ways of helping them spend money.
Oh, that's great, So are there current any plans for improving infrastructure like utilities and transportation and other things that the residents use?
Well, we do fund about $1 million of support for the free bus, and we don't want to give that up because everyone loves the free bus. But we don't actually sponsor transport. What we do fund are the roads and the footpaths. And it's quite an interesting political argument. I think that we really need to have separate bike paths. And interestingly, some members of council hate bike paths, and they want us not to have separate bike paths, but I think it's a matter of safety. I'm not a cyclist, but I really think it's safer for bikes to be separated from cars. Do you ride a bike?
I don't. My dad does.
Yes. Well, then we're putting money now into a north-south link that goes from Frome Road up to the river. And we're investing in upgrades. Next year we're going to start Hindley Street and then Gouger Street and then Melbourne Street and then Hutt Street. So we have a forward schedule. But we spend about $100 million a year on infrastructure. And that 100 million is mainly roads, but also some of our buildings. So this year, for instance, we've spent around 5 million upgrading the town hall because the stonework needed work.
Yes.
We've put almost 6 million into the Rymel Lake, believe it or not. And I don't know if you know the lake, where they're over in the Eastern Parklands.
Eastern Parklands. I don't really.
Where the Fringe is.
Oh yes,
Yeah.
yes.
There's a big pond and a restaurant there.
Yes.
And that's been partly an infrastructure upgrade, but also an environmental upgrade because it had a leaky bottom, and we were spending $120,000 a year on tap water and water to fill up the pond. So we've dug it out, relined it, and we found a way of pumping water from a wetland into the lake so that we don't have to pay for water, which is great.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah, it's a good thing.
Yeah, good solution to
Yeah.
that as well. What drew you to be the mayor? To, I guess, yeah. What was your draw towards being a mayor?
Well, I'm basically a pathologist, and I've got medical qualifications and research qualifications, and
Yeah.
so I'm a city resident, and when I got into local government first, I'd had a fight with the council, and I was so cross with them, I decided to stand for council. And subsequently, I have been the mayor before, and I've been a minister in the state government.
Yeah.
But I always like to sort things out, and it's a weakness. I love sorting things out. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for talking.
Thank you very much. Good luck with nursing.
Thank you.